Welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. We'll open up the phone lines. The last segment of this first hour. Got a special guest who will be on with us at the bottom of the hour. And one of the topics I'm going to want you to speak to is the decision on the part of the Boy Scouts, their National Council yesterday, to overturn their 103-year-old standard on sexuality. When the Boy Scout oath was taken by Scouts since 1910, and they said that they would do their best to do their duty to be morally straight, that had a clear meaning when it came to matters of sexual expression. Homosexuality and homosexual conduct is not a part of being morally straight. It's not a part of being physically strong. We've talked about this repeatedly, the health risks that are involved in homosexual conduct. So you can't be involved in homosexual conduct and be pursuing your scout oath to be physically strong. You cannot engage in homosexual behavior and be carrying out your sacred oath to be morally straight. I mean, there's a reason why even homosexuals call us what? They call us straights. Why do they do that? Because they're bent, they're twisted, they're admitting it even by the terms that they use when they refer to us. You cannot fulfill your scouting oath to do your duty to God, because what God has said our duty is when it comes to sexual expression is very, very clear. It's unambiguous. It's unmistakable. It's shot through the scriptures from the beginning to the end that our duty before God when it comes to sexual expression is to reserve sexual expression for marriage and focus and channel all of our sexual energies into the married relationship of one man and one woman. That's our duty to God. Never change. It never will change. It's always going to be the same. But the Scouts have trashed all that yesterday, 61-39. Stunning outcome to me. And I want to get your reaction at the end of this first hour to this Boy Scout decision. It was a shocker to me, frankly. I thought it was going to be at a minimum 61-39 the other way. I thought here are the people that have sons in scouting. These are adults that have gone into scouting because they wanted to provide character formation for their own sons. You would think they would be the ones that would have the keenest interest in protecting the sexual integrity of their own sons. But they have sacrificed the sexual integrity of their own sons on the altar of the homosexual agenda. They're putting their own sons at risk. Because remember now that the change in policy means that from this day forward, January 1, 2014, an active homosexual, a 17-year-old homosexual, can now be in scouting. Well, it can be, no matter how old they are, they can be in scouting. They can self-identify as a homosexual, and they can be in scouting, which means you can have a homosexual, 17-year-old homosexual, and they can be pretty experienced by then, sleeping in the same tent next to your 11-year-old son. Not seeing it, not going to happen. And so I think you're going to have a lot of parents are going to pull their kids out of scouts and saying, that's not what I signed up for. I did not sign up for the possibility. And realize that the Boy Scouts in this policy change, religious convictions are not permitted as a reason not to adopt this policy. You have to do it despite your religious convictions. I mean, the language is clear. It's straightforward. There's a specific plank in there that says you are not allowed to have religious objections shape your response to this policy. You have to do this. Doesn't matter what your religious tradition, what your church, what your faith tradition teaches about homosexual behavior. You have to allow avowed, admitted, out loud and proud homosexuals to be a part of scouting. And there's no way out. So I think there's going to be a wholesale abdication of the Boy Scouts. 70% of Boy Scout troops in America meet in church buildings or are connected to church faith communities, 70%. Now, some of them are very liberal. They're going to keep right on rolling. The Methodists are going to do it. I'm very curious about the LDS Church, by the way. They puzzled me all the way through this, and I've got a suggestion I'm going to lay out for here in just a second about why I think the Mormon Church has collapsed on the issue. They have virtually now gone AWOL on the issue of homosexuality. You are not going to find the Mormon Church taking a stand for natural marriage, against the homosexual agenda ever again. They're done. They're toast. They've cashed in their chips. I'm not talking about the laity. I'm not talking about the people that actually go to the Mormon churches on Sunday and pay their tithes. I'm talking about the leadership of the Mormon Church. They're gone on the issue of homosexuality, just like Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck is gone on the issue of homosexuality, the homosexual agenda, and same-sex marriage. Bill Riley is gone. O'Reilly is gone on the issue of homosexuality and same-sex marriage. They're not going to represent the truth. They're not going to represent, defend the abiding moral standards of God's word when it comes to sexuality. And you ask yourself, well, why would the Mormon Church capitulate on this? In fact, the Mormon Church came out when this policy was, this resolution was first announced, and Scout leaders were going to be told you're going to have a chance to vote on this in May. The LDS Church came out in favor of this policy change. A lot of people don't know that. But the LDS Church came out with a statement that says, this is fine. We're happy with this. We are cool with this. We are down with this. We're all for having active, avowed, admitted homosexuals involved in our scouting movement. Now, and they sponsor a whole lot of scout troops, especially out in the West. I would bet in my home state of Idaho, probably 85% of the scout troops in Idaho were under the aegis of the Mormon Church. So they have completely folded. They've folded their tent. They've collapsed. They've gone. They're not going to represent biblical values on this issue any longer, from what I can tell, unless they surprise me. The leadership, again, I'm talking about, not necessarily the people in the pews. And I want to explain why in just a second. But I want to go back to this issue of what the Boy Scouts have done here. I'm looking at a piece on American Thinker this morning. Rick Scarborough and Robert Knight co-wrote this. And they refer to this decision yesterday as a betrayal of the highest magnitude. They say the B now in BSA, which used to stand for Boy Scouts of America, now stands for betrayal. The B now stands for betrayal. And I suggested in a tweet yesterday that we might as well rename this organization now. BSA no longer stands for the Boy Scouts of America. It now stands for the Boy Sodomizers of America, because that is exactly what is going to happen. The infamous crime against nature now is going to be, it's been normalized, it's been endorsed, it's been embraced now by scouting leadership. Scouting leadership said there is nothing wrong with the infamous crime against nature. We're cool with it. We're fine with it. We're fine with scouts, 17-year-old scouts that want to practice the infamous crime against nature. We are down with that. We are cool with that. We got absolutely zero problem with that. Now, the next domino to fall is going to be that probably a year from now, we are going to have adult scout leaders. In other words, I mean, it's just bizarre, this policy change, that it's okay to be an out loud, proud, avowed, admitted homosexual at age 17, but all of a sudden it's not at age 18? I mean, that makes no sense in any sort of rational world. So it's a half a loaf, really, that accomplishes nothing. And homosexual activists are already out there beating the drums for the inclusion of adult scoutmasters in the Boy Scouts. That's going to happen because the people that stand for tradition and values, they're out of here. They're gone. They're history. Boy Scouts are finished as an organization in America because the values-driven parents, values-driven churches are no longer going to sponsor scout troops on their property. Now, Christianity Today has got a story today. I'll just mention this in passing. The number of alternatives that are out there for people of faith. It's not just the Boy Scouts now. And I think what's going to happen, this could be a benefit to the alternatives that are explicitly faith-based, explicitly rooted and grounded in Christianity. For instance, in the Seventh-day Adventist tradition, they have a group called the Pathfinders. It's the Boy Scouts, their version of the Boy Scouts. They're called Pathfinders. Southern Baptist denomination, this is the largest evangelical denomination, Protestant denomination in the country. They have a program called the Royal Ambassadors. Same thing. Assemblies of God, they've got a program called the Royal Rangers. All of these are just basically Boy Scout type groups which are explicitly rooted and centered in Christianity. So these organizations, I believe, are going to grow like Topsy, and the Boy Scouts are just going to wither on the vine. I talked with you about this earlier. Canada went this route in 1998. They had 260,000 scouts in the program in 1998. They normalized sodomy in the Boy Scouts. Now they're down to 100,000. They're selling off campsites, retreat centers, other assets, other facilities just to keep their nose above water. Took 15 years to get to that point. I'm telling you, it's going to happen in a heartbeat here in the United States of America. The Southern Baptists are going to end their sponsorship of troops, Assemblies of God's will. The LDS Church, they've already said they're going to hang right in there, and they're going to keep doing it. You know, it's interesting to me that 72% of the American people, according to a poll I saw this week, believe that America is in moral decline. And here's another example of it. And I'd be willing to bet that of the 61% of the Scout leadership that voted for this thing, I'd be willing to bet that most of them, if they were asked, do you believe that America is in moral decline, they would have said, yeah. They would have said, yeah, America's in a moral freefall. We got huge moral problems. Our culture is rotting from the inside. They would have said that. And yet just they showed up yesterday and voted for an acceleration of the moral decline in America. And the secular fundamentalists now, they've got to be dancing on the grave of the Boy Scouts here. They've now shredded moral values in the military because we now have open homosexuals able to serve in the military. Now we have open homosexuality in the Boy Scouts of America. These were the last two organizations that were kind of holding the line, the last two kind of public organizations that were holding the line against this tide of corruption and sexual debauchery, and now they are gone. And let's remember, this is a sobering word for the Boy Scouts of America from Luke chapter 17. These are the words of Jesus himself to the Boy Scouts, and pretty sobering because this comes from Christ himself. Temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe, woe, woe to the one through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were cast into the sea than that he should cause one of these little ones to stumble. I would not want to be in the shoes of a Boy Scout executive standing before the throne of God, being judged by the man who spoke those words, by the God who spoke those words. That is not going to be a pretty picture. So we'll see how all of that plays out. We know that there are health risks associated with homosexual behavior, not just male homosexuality, but lesbian homosexuality. The National Institutes of Health just issued a $536,000 grant to the University of Illinois to help lesbians stop smoking. Why? Because that's an endemic problem in the lesbian community. Health risks associated with that behavior. Back in 2.